All right, guys, welcome to this week's dYdX segment. This week we have Mag, co founder of Skip. Thank you so much for coming on, Mag.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
All right, so getting straight to it, Skip received a grant from dYdX to monitor and analyze sovereign MEV within the dYdX ecosystem. Could you talk a little bit more about the partnership and the efficacy of the order book discrepancy dashboard that you guys have built?
Yeah, sure. So I think a large part of it was just realizing like what is MEV on an order book, right? This was a question that I don't think anyone had really explored prior to us looking at it with dYdX research. And I think what we discovered was, when you have a chain with multiple different validators, the difference in how those validators order their orders or how they process them is actually very indicative of how much MEV is being extracted. So this concept of order book discrepancy actually serves as a very good proxy for figuring out what MEV is. And the dashboard, has been live for a while. And I think one really cool thing that we've noticed is validators have come to us asking us how to reduce their amount of order book discrepancy, which one decreases MEV, but then two just makes for a better trading experience. And it's come to there have been a couple of cases where people exceeded the socially allowed amount of order book discrepancy, and those folks have taken extra measures to make sure they've reduced it. So at a minimum, it served as a great way of like making these metrics more transparent and for folks to realize how they're doing along these lines.
Okay, that's super interesting. I wouldn't have guessed that validators would come to you asking how to reduce their discrepancy, but that kind of makes sense, whether that's like malicious or not malicious. Another super exciting thing that you guys are working on is Slinky, which you guys announced earlier this year. Could you walk us through what that is and why it's so important?
Yeah. So we're big believers in building tooling that allows for sovereign chains to become more powerful. And Slinky is exactly that, right? So basically, what Slinky allows you to do is to build your own restaked native Oracle that uses your own validator set to run and retrieve your own Oracle prices. It's also heavily geared towards performance, and so it can deliver, upwards of 1,000 currency pairs on a per block basis with very little latency. And so, in many ways, it was almost custom designed for dYdX. It was built with their needs in mind, and we're actively working with the dYdX team to explore whether it's a viable option to actually run the Oracle on dYdX. But at a minimum, what it should allow for is tons and tons of new permissionless markets uh, in a much more verifiable and safe way. And so that's one thing that we're really excited to work on with dYdX is how do we get dYdX from 75 markets to over 10,000.
Yeah, that's super exciting. I think permissionless listings are a great thing. And I think reducing the sort of like trust assumptions that you need to have, for example, like most perf dexes, they need to have like another set of trust assumptions with Oracle. And so just bringing that in house and trusting the same validator set seems like a very natural thing to do. I think one last question I wanted to ask is what's the update on the Block SDK? You guys released that a while back, and I was super interested in the entire concept of it. And it seems like Ethereum's like slowly trying to move in that direction. And so I wanted to ask, has anyone adopted it and how are applications using it right now?
Yeah. So the Block SDK was a little bit of a departure from our normal way of building product. It's a fully open source SDK that allows for chains to, split up their block into different lanes that have different ordering and execution rules. Um, we've seen two chains adopt it. So Osmosis and Neutron are both, shipping with the Block SDK in their most recent release or their next release. And the main use case we've seen for it right now is enabling free transactions. So basically, having a dedicated amount of block space that is given to types of transactions and types of actors that should be the network wants to subsidize, right? We've also seen a lot of use for the MEV lane. So the concept of sovereign MEV or recapturing MEV profit for your community instead of letting it leak out of the system has been very popular. And the way that that's implemented in the Block SDK is via top of block auction. So those two things have been very popular. I think the hub is right around the corner from launching with the Block SDK to have an EIP 1559 fee market, which should reduce some of their congestion issues, and especially in periods of high load, makes it a lot harder to DOS the network.
Gotcha. That's super exciting to hear. Unfortunately, that's all we have time for today, but thank you so much for coming on, Mag. And now, moving on to our hot seat crouton segment.
Thank you.